Greetings and welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast covering all things new in classic Trek. Can't we just go to a nice planet for a change? I'm your captain, Myrriah Gossett, and with me on the view screen we have
evil mirrorverse Clyde Haynes today.
Whoa, we've got mustachioed Clyde Haynes in the building. Paul is currently on an away mission. He will be back next week to wrap up Prodigy with us. But just a couple of reminders before we dig into Comic-Con news and these next couple of episodes, 12, 13, 14, and 15 of the second season of Star Trek Prodigy. You can subscribe to this podcast. Also, you could leave us a review. Reviews are super helpful. Also, share the show with a friend. Podcasts still grow the most by word of mouth. So as we're preparing for a new season of Lower Decks that is coming to us next this fall, you know, you want to have a buddy to listen to the pod, have discussions so y'all can talk about it too. So share the show with a friend. You can find links and more at StarTrekPod.co. And if you really like our content and want to hang out with other fans in our Slack channel, you can hang out with us at patreon.com/StarTrekPod. And for just $2 per episode, you get into our Slack channel where there's watch-alongs going on every night of the week. There's discussions. There's things going on in regular pop culture. We're talking movies. We're talking music. There's a politics channel if that's your thing as well. We got something for everyone. And Clyde, if people are hanging out with us live tonight during the live stream, how can they get our attention in the chat?
Simply type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in the chat, and we'll take a look at your question, your comment, your musings. And in a moment, if you have a general thought that you're like, man, this is how I felt about these 4 episodes, then you just type capital H, capital F, capital HF, and we'll take a look at your overall
thoughts, musings,
synopsis.
Yeah. What you feeling? What's your thoughts? What's your feelings? But first, I feel like we have to talk about some Comic-Con news. It happened last weekend. There was a slew. I was checking Twitter all weekend. I was watching trailers. I was getting hyped up. And I feel like we have to talk about the thing that got me the most hyped up right off the bat is the Section 31 trailer.
Ooh, okay.
What did you think about that, Clyde?
I mean,
They got Beyonce.
They did.
The trailer is to a Beyonce song.
That was definitely one of the things that I immediately noticed. A few years back, you know, Myrriah goes to the ATX TV festival every summer. I've gone a bunch of times, especially when I lived in Austin. And I sat in on one of the music clearance panel one year.
Mm-hmm.
So ever since then, I've had this deep understanding, like when you hear a song in a show or a movie, like it's a big deal. Like typically, like some of them, like that's a lot of budget.
A lot of budget. Sometimes you got to get their permission. They got to what it is. Like
frequently, they get a, like, especially if it's a known song, you got to get a thumbs up by the artist, especially if they own the rights. So to have Beyonce on the track was like, it definitely was like, hey, don't multitask, pay attention to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I did catch that. My immediate thought was just like, is Michelle Yeoh ever gonna like not come through in the clutch, right? Because
I don't think it's possible.
I mean, listen, we podcast about television, so that means we watch a lot of television, we talk about a lot of television, and so you name whoever your favorite actor or actress is, you look at their catalog and there's always like one dud. Like I frequently say, listen, I can pretty much watch any Rock or Vin Diesel movie, understanding what it is and know that, look, stuff's going to blow up. There's going to be some cheesy lines in there, but I'm going to be entertained, right? I'm not watching The Pacifier. Not doing
What do you mean, Clyde?
Right? Like, I'm just saying, whoever it is, right? I'm a big Omar Epps fan. I'm a big Lawrence Fishburne fan, but there's some weird ones in there, right?
Yeah,
with
everyone's got one.
But with Michelle Yeoh, I'm just like, you just keep cranking out bangers. Like, I saw that trailer and I was like, yo, she is really
they loved putting Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh on that trailer.
Yes. But I looked at it and I was like, this looks like a really fun movie. I just don't know how they're not going to turn this into a TV show spinoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cast rounded out so well that if they wanted to, they could, right? Like this extended cast is really stacked as well. I'm really excited mostly for Sam Richards, who I've been a fan of for a long time, since like Detroiters, and like he was great on Veep. He's playing a chameleode, is that how you say it? It's the same thing that Amon played in Undiscovered Country, the same kind of.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited to see that play out and have some fun. He's a great comedic actor, and so I think to put him in such a very action-packed movie, to me, is giving a recipe I'm going to enjoy, where you have, Michelle Yeoh, who can give you drama, class, ass kicking, and then you're surrounding her with some genuinely funny people as well. Like, it's going to hit a lot of great points. It kind of in tone reminded me a lot of the very first Star Lord, like Guardian of the Galaxy, like
Interesting.
movie.
It feels a little more serious to me than that, but I could see where you're going with that.
At least in the trailer. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. At least in this trailer cut, it feels like there's a lot of like wink and nod, like a little wink,
Yeah.
a little nod, a little, a little
No,
mischievity.
I agree with you. I like Sam Richardson. I haven't always known how to feel completely about some of his performances. Not him in particular. I always think he does a good job. But I remember him in Ted Lasso. And he did such a phenomenal job to me in Ted Lasso.
He won the Emmy.
Yeah, like it was insane. And then seeing him in some other things really started to show me his range. So that's an exciting pick. I'm also a longtime fan of Amari Hardwick.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of seeing him in this as his typical like badassery. This looks like here's what it is. This is the thought that I have, and I've been saving this. It feels a little like the Star Trek's version of the A-Team is what it feels like.
I could see that. Yeah.
And I'm really for it, right? Like I'm really for it. Guardians is also another a good comp, but like
yeah.
I love a team up. I'm a big fan of a team up. So
it's definitely a team up, or seemingly we're going to get some origin story. I think we're going to get the Michelle, the
Mirrorverse.
Emperor George, the Mirrorverse, Emperor Giorgio origin story. I'm hoping the accent gets a little better. That was a little jarring at the top.
Is that something you want, Myrriah? I don't know that I need that.
The origin story?
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's brief.
Yeah.
I think it's a way to get people in who didn't watch Discovery, is my theory, is so that this movie is like a wider audience appeal. So that's why I think there's an origin story.
Because here's the thing.
Or maybe it's just flashbacks.
Maybe. But I look at it and go, look, here's what we know. She was really bad. She was the queen of bad. And then she became good-ish and joined our cast of heroes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I need to see the background of her being bad, right? Because if you think about it, we don't really know how bad she was. We've heard some stories, but we haven't experienced it. So theoretically, we don't really have this emotional attachment to her as a big bad, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Like she's never really been a true villain,
mm-hmm.
right? We're not talking about Osira, right? This isn't Section 31 with Osira, right? That's not what we're talking about. And so I'm like, great. So right now I know she's bad, but I don't really know she's bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to leave it like that.
Yeah, I could see that. All the way around, I'm pretty excited. I know Olatunde Onsunsame is directing, who I think is masterful with the planning of camera moves and does a really great job of visual storytelling. So I'm stoked to see that. I still have some, I know there was a lot of controversy around like the script, and it was originally two women who wrote on Discovery were writing the script, and then it got taken away, and then some dude, and I don't know what all the inner politics are, and so I can't weigh in on anything, but I know there was some drama, we'll just say. But overall, I'm excited about it, and I think Michelle Yeoh would only sign on to something that she feels great about. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Next trailer we got was for the new season of Lower Decks, which was a full homage to the Undiscovered Country trailer, which I also thought was just perfect Lower Decks.
Yes, perfect Lower Decks.
Yeah, I'm excited. Could I tell you anything about what this season's going to be about? No. Are there Klingon adventures? Seemingly. Were there funny one-liners? Absolutely.
Yes, the boob window was hilarious. And that's what I love about Lower Decks, because they talk about, and Tawny Newsome in particularly has a tendency to talk about those things that we all notice and we go, that's a little weird, but we don't say anything. Like,
but they're gonna say it.
But they say it, and and then when they say it, you go, yeah, right. Like, that's
right. It's weird.
It's weird. Are we still doing that? Like, we're still doing that. Okay.
Yeah, we're still doing that. I'm really excited for the next season. I saw Mike McMahon said on a panel that, networks can change their mind. It doesn't have to be the last season. He's ready if they say go back in. So he was just like, watch it again, get your friends to watch it. Paramount's currently for sale, so who knows, whoever comes in, maybe they want another season of Lower Decks. So
I'm starting to get annoyed, to be honest with you. Like, this is starting to bother me, is that, look, there's a lot of TV. There's a lot of TV, but I'm enjoying my Trek, right? Like, I am literally enjoying my Trek. And so the fact that you keep popping up and saying the final season of Trek is really getting to me, right? Like, we've got a final season of Discovery. You've released the final season of Prodigy. You've released the seemingly, and now you're telling me it's the final season of Lower Decks. Like, and then you had told me that you were going to give me a Section 31 TV show, and now you're giving me a movie. Like, come on, man! Like, you're slowly just telling me, hey, I'm going to take all your Trek away. It's coming. Buckle up, buddy. And I'm a little annoyed.
Speaking of that, there are more things in the pipeline, however. So my only caveat is if we have to, cycle through some shows in order to make way for new voices and new talent, I'm also excited about that. And we get to explore new parts of the universe, right?
Why can't I get a Star Trek Doctor Who or Star Trek Grey's Anatomy where this thing is on for 30 seasons? Like,
that would be
I can't
nice.
get one of those. Like, come on now.
I wish. Well, to this point, Academy is just the spinoff show of Discovery, because I don't know if you saw, but they announced legacy cast members, because we get Mary Wiseman back, we get Tig Notaro back, we get Odom Fair back, and we get Robert Picardo.
Okay, no, I did not see that.
Yeah,
and
so
you had me Mary Wiseman.
Yep.
So but
Jet Reno, we get more Reno. We get more Reno in our lives, and I'm really excited about it.
Reno. You cannot go wrong with Reno.
And our daddy Admiral Odin Fair is also going to be back. So I feel pretty excited about that. And I love that it continues to open the door that, a lot of our Discovery family can just pop back into Academy whenever they want.
I really want, what I'm hoping for is their name is escaping me at the moment. The young one.
Lou DeBario.
Yes.
Adira.
Yes. I would
really love hoping if they get to come back as well.
I'll be honest, I was kind of expecting it. Like, I don't know why. Like, it was like, oh, that just makes a lot of sense. Like, this should happen. So it'll happen.
It'll probably happen.
I'm hoping, because I'm like, if it doesn't, I'll be honest, I'm going to be pretty disappointed.
Yeah, I'd love to see Blue back on that. The other big announcement there was is that Tawny Newsome and Justin Simeon have announced that they're working on a live action comedy series in the Star Trek universe.
Okay.
And
so
I'm
may
excited.
not know this, I don't know if you know this, but I'm like a huge Justin Simeon fan.
I also love Justin Simeon. I've booked
Like,
him on podcasts before. He's super nice, very lovely
oh
person.
yeah, no,
A really great person to listen to if you're like a young filmmaker looking for advice about getting into the industry. I think he does a really phenomenal job of trying to make the industry more accessible to other people.
that panel that I was talking about before about clearing music, he
Mm-hmm.
actually was on it.
Interesting.
And he was talking about how he had to clear music for Dear White People.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw him on another panel, and it was weird because it was a panel, and I think it had a bunch of people on there. And at the end of it, all these people were walking up to like Gloria Calderette,
Mm-hmm.
and Mike Royce. And so nobody talked to him. So I got to sit over and talk to him for a few minutes, and we were just chopping it up. It was great. So I'm a big fan of Justin Simeon. Of course, I'm a fan of Tawny Newsome. This is where Myrriah talks about how she met her at that event I couldn't go to. But I've met John Lewis now. So
the Freemans are covered on this podcast.
So no, that sounds super exciting.
Yeah.
A live action comedy in the Star Trek universe.
The only thing they said was really they just said a bunch of random words together because they're like, we can't tell you anything. The key word that stuck out for me was shenanigans.
I'm here for it.
And yeah, because Justin Simeon said, I think you shenana once, shame on me. You shenana again, shame on you. It was, yeah. And it's in its early phases, but I'm very excited for whatever it is. And I know Tawny's also been writing on Academy, and really getting to learn the world. So in my eyes, this just means to me, eventually, Kurtzman's just going to hand over the keys to Tawny Newsome, right? Like that to me, I was like, oh, Tawny's in 3 projects. Like, is this eventually going to become the Star Trek extended universe of Tawny Newsome's brain? I'm here for it.
Me too. Sign me up.
Sign me up. I am ready. Yeah, the other clip that they played is like a sneak peek from an episode of Strange New Worlds, which had lots of elements of things that I loved. The outfits, the walk down the hall, the comedy bits once they got on the planet. Pelia is everything to me. But I would encourage people to go watch. A friend of the pod, Jesse Gender, did a really great breakdown of some of the problematic conversation and language in that clip, surrounding multiracial people and how they keep falling into this trope of being racist to Spock. So I highly recommend checking that out, getting some more information about it in the history and the context of media. And I hope that they are listening. And yeah, I mean, I'm ready to let the whole episode air and see what happens. Maybe they come around and talk about why it's problematic in the episode. It's hard to judge things off of a clip, but I was very like, oh no, we're doing it again. Oh no.
I enjoyed the clip. I mean, I was like, my first thought was you gave me 5 minutes of Strange New World, so thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the costumes were great. I was like, wow, them as Vulcans, this is fascinating. Like, okay.
Right. We've had episodes where people go in disguise as other species. That is nothing new, but it is very interesting when they decide that things that are culturally learned apparently are genetically coded? Question mark?
Yeah. And so the other thing is, I mean, I like to think this is our pod, so I can say what I want to say.
Say what you want.
In the Black community,
how does Uhura go from one completely different style to another in not in like a I'm gonna have a wig change moment?
It's not just that, but like especially in America, in history, there was this thing like if you're a drop, then you're just considered, right? And so in African American history, if you remotely look Black, you will get treated, and you deal with a lot of the bigotry, prejudicial issues, racism, oppression. And so there's a sense of like, at least in our and in the Black community, of not always having to hone in so heavily on this idea of, well, you're not fully.
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of sort of like, okay, I got it the first time when they said it, but they kept saying it and they kept saying it. And I was like, the joke isn't funny. Like, it was cool. Like the first time, like, okay, but now it's offensive. Like you're telling this person who's identified himself as Vulcan, right? He's lived his life kind of in Vulcan, having to understand his heritage, and you're honing in on the fact and kind of teasing him that he's not 100% Vulcan. I don't want to hear it again. Like that's kind of where I kind of landed. It was like, all right, like as excited I am about this, it was kind of like,
Yeah.
that wasn't
Yeah,
funny.
it rubbed, it was like the first time I was like, oh, and then yeah, when they said it like again, I was like, guys, like what are we doing? Um, but I am interested to see what they do with the episode and how it all shakes out. And perhaps they all learn a lesson about what they're doing is bad, and that's the lesson, right? Like that
Yeah.
could be the lesson, and I'm here for that lesson. But
I know enough that I don't want to take a clip and completely like judge it.
right,
I want to trust the writers. We always on this pod, we say, look, you got to trust the writers. You got to trust the writers until they prove that,
they're untrustworthy.
right. Until they prove that the reason for the burn was, not a good reason. But mostly I would say 95% of the time we just trust writers. So I want to trust them in this. And Star Trek is such that you have these edutainment moments where they're
Mm-hmm.
going to teach us something. So I'm going to lean in, like you said, and really believe that we're going to be edutained by the end of the episode.
Yeah. Agreed. But yes, please go watch Jesse's video. I think she does a great job of breaking down some of the like media tropes and some good media literacy points. So if you would like to hear more, I would point you in that direction. The Prodigy panel was packed, which was great. The Blu-rays just went on sale. It's been in top 10, I think, on like Amazon for Blu-ray sales. So potentially Netflix, like you could make another season of this show. And I think you should, because I think it's time for us to jump in and start talking about this season. What do you think, Clyde?
I agree. I don't want it to have to come down to Blu-ray sales because that feels like an outdated metric. I was talking to some people the other day about record players, right? And records, vinyl. Like I do not have your ear, Myrriah. You have a producer's ear. We have a record player here in our home. I went out and got a couple albums. I have a Tribe Called Quest like anthology on vinyl. I'm gonna be honest with you, I can't tell the difference between that and listening to it, like streaming it off.
Well, it might also depend
Apple.
on your record player and what kind of speakers you have.
There's a whole setup, but I also know that if I'm playing it from my phone and I pop in my AirPods, then I can hear it in every room. I can hear it as I go out for a run. I can hear it
Right.
like I look at it. And so I look at how we consume media today, right?
Mm-hmm.
We stream it. We'll have a digital copy of it. Like, I think there are new ways to say, hey, this property, Prodigy in particular, is valuable and worth the investment, right? And I think if you look at people who are watching it, who are streaming it, who are talking about it, that should be a case. And at the end of the day, it's just good stuff. So make more of it.
Yeah, agreed. And with that, I think it is time for some hot breaks. It's time for some hot breaks.
Do you ever think that Jonathan Frakes, like in his circle of friends, is ever just incessantly teased about the deep V? Like,
I feel like they're jealous of the deep V, or being like, do you still have the deep V? Like that would be a costume piece I would have kept,
I mean, yes, I would say two things. One, if I was Jonathan Frakes' friend, I would say every 3 years, maybe every 4 years for Halloween,
deep V
I would just come as him in the deep V, right? Yeah. Like every 3 years, maybe 3 years and then 4 years, because you want it to be a surprise to the point where he was like, please stop. Like I'd be that friend that was just. But on the other hand, it's kind of like the J-Lo deep V. He kind of rocked.
He pulls it off.
So you just have to sit back a little bit and be like, Dude,
Good job.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
It's good. It's good. Okay, we have some messages from the Menage from Karen. I'll read. But Clyde, what did you think of these 4 episodes of Prodigy? Apparently, I'm really great at picking the episode split when there's a part 1 and 2, so we only talk about part 1. But it's for suspense. It's for suspense.
So one, I thought about that. Like I kind of knew that was coming when you picked it. But I actually kind of sort of like it. Because what I didn't, and here's the thing, and it's because it's streaming, it's one of those things where we're gonna talk about the episode, and then I'm gonna watch the part 2 of it like later tonight, probably, right?
Right.
And so I don't have to really wait. But I didn't want to watch it. Like I wanted to feel, because you don't get this that often with streaming, but I wanted to feel the suspense of like, right? I enjoyed this. I definitely feel like I'm more when it comes to Prodigy. This is weird because I do not feel this way with Star Trek a lot. I think I like the serial better than the series. Like, I think I'm using that right. I like when the story is continuous
versus the more episodic episodes.
Yeah, I think with Prodigy, it's just not quite working for me with the episodic. I didn't completely love the triple episode. Kind of sort of fascinating at times, but I just don't think I really loved it. The rest of it, I was like, man, this is great stuff.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think Karen agrees with you. I'll read Karen's message from the Menage in a second, but yeah, I ultimately agree. I think like the episode where we're finally getting the ship out, that we started with in 12, the part 2 there, and then I do love the title, A Triple Called Quest. And then Cracked Mirror also felt like a bit of a heightening to get to Ascension part 1. And so I think like to me I would agree. Yeah, it's like the middle pieces can sometimes lose a bit of that momentum, but I understand why they're there. And like we get to see some key character moments, but they are to me some of the ones that feel the most like this is a kids show, which I also think is like there's like a morality play within a lot of them, but on a kids level, right? We're not talking about like a TNG or a Voyager episode morality play where like it's big adult themes for us to really grapple with. It's things about like, oh, mistakes aren't bad to make, right? Like that was ultimately the thing of the triple episode is we're dealing with, unknowable variables, right, in your experiments, which I think is cute and is a really great moment for a kid's show to be making, right? And Karen shares, the real meat of this is definitely episode 15, but I enjoyed all of them. Last Flight of the Protostar Part 2 is a real character piece set in a beautiful visual feast. The scene where Chakotay talks to Dal about how you find where help is needed and find your place, whatever that might be, is one of my favorite scenes of the whole series. It's beautiful. You really get to see Dal bloom after that. I agree. Cracked Mirror is just plain fun. I'm a little bummed we didn't see Captain Tuvix. And then Ascension Part 1 has a lot of really interesting points. Mostly, I really wanted to see a Chakotay Janeway kiss. And there were 2 very close calls. IMO. I love Chakotay's bond with the crew and how Gwen really steps up as a great first officer. Dal is thinking strategically, and I want to slap Essentia. What a villain. Yeah, those are all great points.
I have to say this arc, right, is some of the best Dal episodes in the series. Like
where you see his ability to calculate risk in such a way where you do think he could fall on his face, but he has enough belief in himself and understanding of himself to get out on the other side. Right.
Yeah, I think he wants to be the young Kirk.
Right.
And he might be the Paris, right? He might be the Tom Paris.
Yeah, he's got to fall a little bit before he can really get back up.
Well, what I mean is, the thing about Tom Paris is he's incredibly talented, right? And when you look at Paris, there's nobody better at what he does. But he's kind of a loose cannon and he's a little bit all over the place. And you go, man, as critical as you are to everything, the big chair might not be for you.
Right. Like you might be the fly by the seat of your pants pilot. Right. They've definitely been a lot of Paris coding, I think, for Doll, especially with the like jumping into, whatever that the I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget anyway, but the ship that he jumps in, in part 1 of Ascension is like a ship designed by Tom Paris.
The
So
Nova Flyers, yeah.
the Nova Flyers, yes. I thought that was also really interesting. I enjoyed seeing like the teamwork makes the dream work in our part 2, and also like agreeing with Karen's point, it like really beautiful animation in so many of these episodes, but I thought that one in particular with like the weird gas sea and like the it felt like a sea adventure, which was a fun place to be with this crew, and it felt different and yes, very Trekky, and like it was about trying to solve this puzzle together, and I thought you saw everyone grow in unique ways, especially like everyone kind of gets their growth moment in these 4 episodes.
Yeah, I'd agree. And in the kind of part 2, Doll jumping off of the ship to
Mhm.
save Chakotay, like, that was a wonderful moment,
Mhm.
right? And all the things in there, and I think we see the relationship, platonic or otherwise, between Dal and Gwen
Mhm.
grow
Mhm.
and really start to blossom. I think um we have a couple Murph moments. We're
Mhm.
starting to see Rock mature a little bit more. Like it's great. And I think, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but kind of in the final episode that we're going to cover today, the fact that they split up was
Mhm.
really interesting to me. Like, you've got Zero in sick bay, Doll's going to go with the Nova Flyers, and the rest of the team is headed to the Protostar. Like,
Mhm.
I thought, I don't know how to articulate it quite the way I want to, but that felt like a maturity moment, right? Is that we can do this together, but we don't have to be in the same place to do it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's not about proximity. It's about us all working
Mhm.
towards the same goal.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kind of jumping through these middle episodes, we have a triple called quest where we have a Klingon who's accidentally created these like giant triples with teeth, and then Rock, and it really creates the cutest thing we've ever seen since
Bribble.
Murph season 1, a Bribble. Um,
Bribble.
it's so cute. I cannot stand it. I need it in a plushie, like
I mean,
immediately.
so my first thought was, oh, that is cute. And then I was like, these guys, they know how to create characters to sell merch.
Yeah, but then they never make us the merch that we want. Like,
Right.
I needed way more Murph things while he was still a cute little slug. And now I
Mhm.
need a million Bribble things because it's
Yeah.
so cute. I need a Bribble Christmas ornament. I need it to be
Mm.
glittery and cute. I could also see, those dolls that like when you squish them, their face changes from like smiley to like with teeth. Have you seen those
Mhm.
things? I need a Bribble
Mhm.
that does that because then
I
it
need a
has
Bribble
teeth.
shirt.
And a little Bribble shirt. I need so many Bribble things. So if anything, I'm glad we had this episode just for a Bribble.
Yes, I just didn't
Um,
like it. I was sitting there. It definitely reminded me, like, and I think to Karen's point, it slows down the pace a little bit. So if we think about
mhm,
where you took me, I'm like, oh, go, and then I get to this triple called quest episode, and I'm like, and now I feel like I've got to get through it. Like, keep watching, just keep watching, and then you pick up the pace again,
mhm,
right? Because you pick up the pace and you drop me in a mirror universe,
right.
right? Or several.
Several universes. Yeah, and I think, it was the episode for Rock to learn kind of her big lesson. And so I think if you're like trying to give everyone sort of their moment throughout the season, to me, this was the Rock episode.
Mhm.
And so I'm always glad to see that. And to Karen's point, I thought the Klingon was very funny. It was a very like
Great.
fun hijinksy episode. it was just fun. It was good fun, and it gave them the opportunity to power up the protostar, which then gets us to cut a rift through time and go to Voyager, which has been splintered into multiple realities, which I thought was such a fun nod to like so many episodes of Discovery where like the ship is like half, like in a jump and half not in a jump. Also the Harry Mudd episode. I feel like timey-wimey ship is stuck in a time rift. I mean, the musical episode of Strange New Worlds, like so much time messiness gives us, I think, some of the most fun episodes of Trek. And I think Cracked Mirror was very similar in that you got to see all of these weird different levels where you have Enterpriseians on one, you have the reality where Janeway and Norum died rescuing Chakotay, and then you have Rock and Zero finding Truvix running another thing, and then I guess poor Majel ends up sitting, I think, in the universe with what's his name?
Captain Ponytail.
Yeah. I thought I pasted Okana, mischievous Okana. Yeah, outrageous, not mischievous, outrageous Okana. I thought it was fun and interesting. And then Mirrorverse, the bad mustachioed, goateed Chakotay was hilarious.
I mean, absolutely fun. I mean, you got to say sleeveless shirt, guns out.
I was like, ooh, this is when it pays to be on an animated show because that actor then does not have to get that ripped to play all these parts.
I mean, you're starting to have me think about what animated Clyde might look like. Just
right. You can be anything you dream.
Man, with just a six-pack. Yeah. No, I thought it was cool. I mean, I did see the chemistry between, Chakotay and Janeway, both in the Mirrorverse and in the Prime verse. And Karen's right. Like they almost kissed a couple times. I was really hoping that they weren't, but I give up.
Yeah, there's definitely there's 100% of romance vibe. There's no denying it. And it is there. I did think it was interesting because essentially, like timeline wise for the Mirror universe, it like the Terrans were destroyed prior to this, but it sounded like there was a bit of a resurgence. Because I think Janeway says something about like the reordain or like essentially something to do with like everything coming back, it's like a resurgence. Like a resurgence of them. But so that's interesting also with the idea of like, oh, we've been trying to keep everyone out of here because it just causes a mess. So I'd be interested to get a clear timeline of what's going on in the Mirror universe. But what did you think about how they introduced the idea of the Mirror universe? Because it is something that is so inherently Star Trek, but obviously you're trying to introduce it to a kid's audience. And do you think it was clear enough what this was?
No, I don't. But I also think they stopped trying to do a kid show a while back. And then they pop in every once in a while like, oh yeah, wait, this has got to be for kids. So I think it was brief. Like,
yeah, they kind of like Chakotay sort of explains like, oh yeah, like, oh, mirror, it's a reflection, it's different, like they kind of like dive into the mechanics of what it means to be in the Mirror universe.
It's like the opposite. And like it, you've always said, look, pop it up there, kids will figure it out.
Right.
We've all figured out mirror universes, right? We all figured out mirror universes with the original Trek when we were watching and when we were all kids. Yeah, so
that's true.
I imagine that it wasn't that hard to figure out. Like the lighting changes,
the costumes are different.
The costumes, there's a goatee involved.
There's bad facial hair, yeah.
Right. And you had a bunch of people shooting lasers at the good guys. It's not hard to figure out.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very
true.
True.
It's just the question becomes, how many Janeways can you have in an episode?
So I will say the funniest part to me. I think there was like 4 because or something crazy, because I remember watching the credits and it's like it says, Milgrew, and then it has like underneath it was like Hollow Janeway, Admiral Janeway, Mirror Janeway. It was just like so funny to see them
No,
all in a row.
I like when the hologram Janeway hailed Voyager.
Janeway to Janeway.
Janeway to Janeway. I think that was hilarious.
It was pretty funny. I also liked when Hollow Janeway has to pet sit the Burble and is like, "Oh, I'm more of a dog person."
She's like, "This
"Oh,
might be more entertaining for me."
yep, I'll hang out with this cute little creature with the biggest eyes in the world." Um, yeah, I thought it was interesting to hear all of the like essentially versions of their future that they could have interacted with, and then those darn looms show up again. Those scary, scary looms, and we get out just in time. It was super spooky, and I thought was such a clever hint to what we get to in the next episode, because they're like, I thought Will Wheaton was going to keep these things away from us.
Yeah, like what,
and then they're
what
just
happened?
like, JK Wesley Crusher has been captured.
That was a shock. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, quite the reveal at the end of that ep. I did love, like, to your point, we talked a bit earlier about like the team up and them sort of figuring out their different places and splitting up, with Dahl with the Nova Squadron, which was like a nice callback to when he interrupts them in the training room. And I think Majal and Dahl are really great counterparts to each other in how they approach problem solving, but ultimately are going to, I think, provide openings to see the lessons from the other person's point of view. And I think it's really smart character pairing.
I agree. And I love the fact that she gives us something a little bit different in the fact that she almost immediately sees the value in Dahl, right? Like very early on, she's just like, what's wrong with you? But she quickly starts to figure out like his strategy, the way he sees things is different. And so she invites him into the Nova Squadron training. And so I like that, because as much as Dahl has been this character that I've struggled with over the last few episodes, that he has had a redemption arc. And not only that, but they've helped us see it. So one of the things I also liked is when he comes up with the idea to let the protostar send back the coordinates. Janeway goes, "That's a great idea." Like it was like, oh yeah, it's not, I thought it, but she highlighted the fact that he does have this tremendous value. Just, and I think what we're seeing is just not in the chair.
Right. Like he has good strategy thoughts. I think he would ultimately be like a great bridge crew member. I just, to your point, I don't know. And he is, struggling since seeing that sort of vision in the portal, when Wesley connects them all to it, and he takes a glance at his future and he sees he's essentially telling Gwen to take the chair and that he's not ready for it. But I think there is, and we've talked a lot about that relationship between a captain and their number one a lot in like making those selections, through Discovery's multiple captain selections and having to pick their number ones. And then I think we've talked at length that, the relationship between Picard and Riker and what their number one and captaincy together really looked like, and how that is such an important dynamic to set up. And I do think paired with the right person, Dahl is a good number one, because he is that little bit of chaos. He is that little bit of unnerving, unwielding, bravery and bravado that, when paired with like a much more grounded and thoughtful captain, I think could be a great pairing in the future. And obviously they have to still make it through the Academy, which wouldn't that be fun if on Academy we got to see all the Prodigy people?
At least like once, that'd be very cool.
I know they're in totally different time frames.
Totally different time zones.
I don't care.
Or even a reference to them, right? Like it would be cool. What I would like
Dahl's the only one to ever solve the Kobayashi Maru or something.
or something simple that would be super nerdy, but like they're looking at a list of past alums and we see their names on there,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like stuff like that. But like I thought it was great. I think the one thing that they haven't done, and this is where it like dips into kid stuff, like I think for all of us, when we get into the timey-wimey stuff, what you've seen is one version,
Hmm.
right? Unless you're doing the whole like Klingon crystal thing. For the most part, what you've seen is one potential version
Right.
of what could happen.
Hmm.
And it's usually geared to like, hey, buckle up, get it together, or this is where you're going. So I know he's distraught about that, but I often think that doesn't have to be the way it ends up.
True. 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 Um, Essentia is back, being her big bad villainous self, causing a war, being classic big bad villain. And apparently, I'm thinking by having Wesley, time traveler Wesley Crusher on board, is then does she potentially have the power to like summon the loom?
I don't know.
It could get very intense. I'm very scared. Um, but yeah, she's been a great big bad and is doing all the things great big bads do. Kidnapping people, using emotional baggage to get dads to call their their offspring to locate them so that they can come and hit you with a bunch of laser beams and almost destroy the new Voyager. Really crazy.
She is remarkably a good big bad.
Mhm.
I'm shocked at how good a big bad she's turned out to be.
I mean, I am, but I am not. I feel like, you're someone who went undercover for this long, like in season 1, and like if if you're someone who's willing to live in lies that much, you're willing to live in lies for a lot of power.
Well, I think the thing about it was the setup is what's paying off,
Mhm.
right? Like it's hard to introduce a big bad like fresh, right? Like
Yeah, and this is
you,
essentially the
yeah,
same big bad we had from season 1 that just keeps
hmm,
getting bigger and badder. Like
right. And I think the thing that's nice is that she's able to say, I'm not your ensign anymore, right?
Mhm.
Like she's got this history of knowing, and she's betrayed everybody here,
Mhm.
right? And that type of baggage, that type of longevity is what makes her a really big bad, right? Like it's like in order to be a big bad, I feel like a good big bad, I feel like you either need to be like so bad and clever that I want you gone, or the buildup has to pay off, right?
Mhm.
In a way that it's you can't be that big bad that you were a good guy and now you're a bad guy, and I'm hoping that you find the right path again. But she's been in the background, and then she's elevated. It's like she's been promoted to the big bad.
Yeah, Karen brings up a good point. She believes she's right.
That helps.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's wrong, but it helps.
It helps that she thinks she's right. Yeah, I
Mhm.
I wanted to touch a bit on Zero's corporeal body deteriorating, which seems to be going by so fast. Like wow, body's really not made to last. Um,
Well, she got ran over by a giant tribble, which I thought was unnecessary.
yeah, they did. They did. And then it is interesting though that like essentially they're like, "Oh, but it's more than that, like you are just like deteriorating as a whole." Um but then I think it's really sweet that Zero then asks Jinkum to essentially build them a new body, which
I
is
thought it
also a
was
little
sweet.
scary. It's very sweet.
I
I feel like
mean,
Jinkum's
look,
up for the task at this point. It'll come together. It might not look the prettiest, but it'll be there.
here's my thought on that. I thought it was a great moment. And
Mhm,
again, now we're dipping our toe back into the kids moment,
mhm.
because as much as I thought it was sweet and that works, and I'm going to let it go. My initial thought was this: Daystrom Institute,
Right.
Jank and Pog.
I mean, love
Mm,
Jenkem, but, like,
I
if
love
you're
Jankum.
it's like if you were like, "Let's go to the Mayo Clinic," or your friend who just graduated from medical school.
Hmm.
Both have training, right?
Sure.
But one is the Mayo clinic and one's your friend who just graduated from medical school.
Like, don't you want to go to the place where Data goes when he needs to be fixed? Like, that's where I'm
Right.
going.
Yeah. I'm like, maybe
Like, you
might
can
be
get a
a good
positronic
idea.
body. Like, you can, right? Like, they've done this a bunch of times.
Done it quite a
Like,
few times.
the last thing you need if you're zero is when your knee starts hurting, Jacob goes percussive maintenance and hits you with the hammer. Like, you don't need that. That's
It's probably not going to work out in the
not
end.
no.
Yeah, they do a good job of also, I think, nodding to things that like Trekkies would uh scowl about. So, they do a good job of setting up that like, oh, the ship should go to the Department of Temporal Investigations, which was something that was introduced in Deep Space Nine. And then Jellicoe mentions that the Federation has become dependent on A500 androids, which is setting up the whole thing with Picard and the Romulans. So they're like, we know a lot of you are listening and paying attention to these timelines and the things that are happening. And so we're going to drop all these pieces of information so that you two know that we are paying attention and listening.
Jellicoe's so interesting to me because
he gives such Admiral vibes.
He does.
But like, yeah.
I think I want to meet Ronnie Cox in real life and like have some coffee with him because he's played so many bad guys. Like, I mean,
yeah, I think there's just those people who give off. I'm sure he's probably like a very nice person in real life.
I'm hoping like he'd be like, oh man, like are his friends like, man, your character's very weird, but you're a really cool dude. Because to me, and yet maybe it's because I was like 11 or 12 when I saw it, but he's always he's the bad guy from RoboCop for me. So every time I hear his voice, I see him, I'm like, yo, I can't trust you.
I can't do it.
So, but
that's
no,
a face I cannot trust.
No, not at all.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to keep going and figure out what all these crazy things that Essentia has stolen from Solum and, temporal weaponry that's available to her, which I'm assuming is just going to like create a rift in space-time for them to toss the protostar through. That's where I'm assuming it's going, but I'm excited to see how we get there.
It's going to be a wild ride.
A wild ride. Anything else to say about these episodes?
No, let's keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep trucking. So I think how many episodes are left? That's a great question.
I think there are 5 left, right? 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, let's do it.
Season 2, right? Let's double check the maths just so that we're not like, uh-oh. Just kidding. There's so many more episodes. I haven't been looking forward because I don't want any spoilers, but okay, yeah. So there's 20 episodes 20. Left. So yeah, we'll finish them out. So we'll get the finale, and then we'll I know they announced the lower decks
October 24th.
October 24th. So we still do have some time. So we'll have to figure out what we want to chat about in the meantime. We could do a lower decks rewatch and prep if we wanted to. We could do an episode per season and binge a lot of lower decks, which I also wouldn't be sad about.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll talk to Paul.
We'll figure it out. Thank you to Karen who hung out with us tonight. Thank you for listening. If you are listening to the podcast, we appreciate you as well. We will be back next week to talk the finale of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 and any other Star Trek news that come out of Star Trek Las Vegas, which is currently happening right now. So until next time, y'all, live long and prosper. Bye-bye.
Bye.